Okay, so really what we're here to talk about today is something that's extremely important, which is culture. Okay, what is your club's culture? Is it important to you? Do you have a plan for culture? Have you communicated what your culture is going to be? Or is it not important right now? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that because we feel that the culture of our gym and what we expect from top to the bottom, whether it's parents, athletes, and coaches, we just feel like if you have that, it's extremely important. It's aided to kind of where we're at right now. Okay.
And going back, I don't think we talked about like the size of our gym. I know a couple that came in early, but we have about 300 competitive athletes at our Shirts location and about 50 at our Austin location. But we work with also about 12 high schools, and we have about 500 tumblers. So we have over 1,000 athletes total, and that our coaches work with. So the club culture that we're going to talk about has changed from when we first started until now. So
So where we were was probably closer to 6 teams. We probably we had one high school at that time, and our tumbling program was probably closer to 150, 200, right around there. And so same building, well, not necessarily the same mat size, but the same building. It's not bigger, but it's just a culture change and a thought process change on how do you take that many people and put them into that box and still make it flow successfully. Right. So that's a culture change.
And we had to also transfer from the previous owner's culture, which was very, she didn't market, she didn't have a website, she only took cash, those types of things, to transitioning those clientele to the customer base to what we kind of envisioned, which was, we were on the other side, we had been customers, so we transitioned over to a more professional, just a more professional, what we wanted as a customer, those types of things. So.
Exactly. And you got to think about also all those things that you may not think about, which are, if the leader has a different faith background, different experience as far as just life experience, culture, their own personal culture. Those things all come into play as you start to transition your culture onto others. Especially in that professional setting, because you got 20 coaches and all of them have different backgrounds and faith thought processes and life experiences. And so you have to, you don't want to spend all your time chasing all those down. It's just being aware of those things as you're moving through that process.
Okay. And quick example of that was the previous owner was Mormon, and they were not allowed to show midriff. So, she just respected that part of her religion. So, up until about 4 or 5 years ago, you'll never see a Stars Viper team with midriff. They always covered up there, and we lost some customers because of that. Not a ton, but there was a couple that came to the gym because they liked that and they respected that. So, okay.
All right. So, culture starts with you. So does anybody, like when we talk about culture, does anybody feel strongly about that in their gym? What do you consider your culture? Just share that. Anybody?
So I took the gym over this year, so I've had it for 1 year. And on our wall are our 4 values that we put in: positivity, commitment, supportive, and
right.
pressure.
It's okay.
Yeah, no.
Enthusiastic.
Okay.
And whenever I talk about, whenever I talk to the kids or the people about it, they're what we're aiming to have through everything that we do.
Right.
So and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's important, right? So she has 4 core values. Let's just call them pillars, whatever you want to call them. However, I come from a corporate background, so the terms I'm using are just what's in my brain the last 15 years. Okay, so commitment. Well, let's say enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Positivity, supportive, and commitment.
And so for you to say, hey, you're matching my enthusiasm, the culture we're looking for. Like what would be a specific characteristic?
So of enthusiasm, wanting to be there and being excited to be there and excited to be involved in what we're creating.
Okay, awesome. All right. Okay. All right. So, and the reason why I did that is because it's important to be able to define it. When we use the vague, high-level terms, it might mean something different to everybody in the room. And so, if you're leading that pack, right, that group, and you're moving through the process, you need to be able to tell them what enthusiasm means to you, because they're going to have to make a decision. Do I want to be part of that group, or do I not want to be part of that group? right? So, because we want to make sure we're defining it correctly for people. The way, what's in your mind.
We're going to have to keep it in this mode, guys, by the way. For some reason, it's not letting me. Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll break these down. So how do I communicate what our culture is to others? How do I facilitate that action plan? That is probably the most important thing. How am I going to communicate it? And then how are we going to build it? How's that going to work? And we'll break it down, coaches, parents, and athletes, because it means something different within that culture to each one of those groups. But once they understand what it means to each one of them individually within those groups, then they'll understand what it means together. And that's a key thing we always talk about, together. If you ever see some of our parents, it's hashtag SB together. That's really one of our big things that we talk about. Everything happens together.
Watch, when I take it to play, it was taking me back to that one. It won't let me go.
In case you didn't know who we were.
Yes, okay. All right, again. All right, so the first bullet point on that last slide was culture. I'll just do it from this. It's not a big deal. Thank you. It starts with you. And one of the things that we, as parents, that we wanted when we were there was we wanted honesty and we wanted genuine, like, we didn't want somebody saying, oh, you know what I mean, the teams are doing great, or they're not doing great, or it's because your athletes, like, we kind of felt that sometimes. And so now that we're in this position, we are always make sure that we're 100% honest with our customers. And it's kind of scary sometimes because you put yourself out there. And but I think if as soon as you do that and they know and understand that you're going to be honest with them, then they trust you in all areas. So if the teams are doing bad, or if they're not where they need to be at a competition that we experienced this year for the first time, which is scary, when we go to talk to them, they trust us and they know that we have a plan and something in place. So we have found that that's genuine. Y'all know what I'm talking about there, right? As far as I could get up here and we could try to sell you all this stuff, but as long as we're genuine and we're telling you truly like what we feel from our heart, and that's what your customers want. I promise that's what they want. So,
and for me, in that first bullet, it's consistency. Mm-hmm. All right, you can't go back to your gym and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and it's going to happen. And 2 weeks later, they don't hear those words. They don't see that because nobody is going to make a decision based on what you say. They're going to make it based on what you do, and it's what you do every day. Consistency, that message never changes. Whether the mood is good, whether you got first place at a competition, whether you got 50 other people to show up to your tryouts this year, whatever it is, when things are going well, it just can't be when that is. Even when things are going not well, those same conversations and those same philosophies have to happen. So consistency in your coaching, consistency in your leadership is going to be critical to what you do, regardless of what the environment is.
Right. Okay. Next one?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. All right. All right.
Okay. So what we did here, obviously it's going to be communication. I'm not telling you anything you already don't know. Mm-hmm. Whenever anything happens in your gym that's an obstacle, you run into a situation, it normally is because somebody misunderstood something. So it boils down to a break in communication. Mm-hmm. It could be poor communication. It could be a variety of things, but it always revolves back to communication. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you are communicating and people understand you and then verbalizing things back to you is critical, and regardless of what you're doing. And
I would say that when we're talking about in the United States in general, we've only been doing this 5 years, and we got Gym Owners of the Year, and we were like, that's really strange. But I think it boils down to this, honestly, because I think that with his professional background and my teaching background, a lot of the industry is missing that right now, at least in the United States. I'm not sure how it is here, but so when we went in and we started doing all these things, and we started, our parents were, just everything that we did, from working with USASF to varsity, how we, pay our competition fees. We just make sure that it's professional and everything is on time, and it's all done through that. So that's just a little preface there. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we did is we just broke it down. The best way to tell you is what we do in our gym. So real life examples of how we build culture in our gym. So this is not in any way like, okay, this is a class on how to build culture. This is just how we do it. Okay, and so if you have questions, I'll probably stop in between each major bullet point and just fire any questions that pop up in your head. So tell your employees, right? So we're focusing on our employees right now. Number one, we have to set the right expectations. Okay, you got to show up on time. Okay, you got to be there. Okay, when this is how we coach. This is how we work together. You know, so whatever the case may be. So like for instance, we don't have a head coach. You know, everybody works together. That's part of our culture. So setting those expectations that not only are our kids being coached, but you're being coached too. So if I walk up to you and I'm saying, hey, listen, when you delivered that message to this athlete, tell me what you were thinking. The culture is you need to talk to me and you need to tell me what you were thinking because I can't assume what you were thinking. I can just tell what it looked like from the outside, but you may give me a completely different reason. So the culture is we have to set the expectations that you're going to talk to me when we're talking, and that you're going to take your ego and you're going to leave it at your house because it's too big to get in our front door, right? As well as mine. I have to leave mine at home too. And so that has to be an expectation that's set. So setting expectations.
And just so y'all know, when we took over, that was Danny came in, wanted the. You adjust because he came in corporate background. I came in with a teaching background. His expectation was that they're all going to wear collared shirts now. The coaches with tuck in their shirts, and our with our first staff meeting, employees were like, what, like what, like and they couldn't eat on the floor anymore. They couldn't. There was all these rules all of a sudden that that he was he wanted, and it was very. It was a shock and it turned them off. And I sat down with him that night and I was like, babe, I know that you work in a corporate world, but this is not going to work with our coaches. You know what I mean? So he had to kind of go back a little bit and
Plan D.
Yes.
I got down the alphabet quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's where, I mean, if you own a gym or you're a coach, if your athlete gives you feedback or your employees give you feedback, you better listen.
Or if your wife gives you feedback.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So as far as providing opportunity for them to provide input, that they have to feel okay with that. There's a lot of coaches that feel like they can't say anything because Rebecca's more of the face of the gym. I'm more kind of on the side over here and working kind of how
he's more with the athletes and I'm more with, I would say, the parents. Yeah.
And so she, if Rebecca asks them to do something, she's the sweetest person you're going to meet. We're completely opposite. Okay, she's the sweetest person you're going to meet, and they don't want to let her down, right? And so sometimes she'll say, hey, can we do this? We're going to do this, and they're scared to tell her no, versus because they want her to be happy. And so giving them opportunities to provide you that input and tell you, you know what, I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't know if I'm going to bring the enthusiasm behind your initiative here because I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't know if I see it the same way you do. And so really making sure that you provide them an opportunity for that input and that you're listening to it is going to be critical. Okay? And then it's...
When do you do that? Because I find that too.
Right.
And then when they leave, the parting letter almost says,
right.
I was too scared to
yeah.
go because I don't want to let you down, the disappointment thing. And
I think it's a learning process of mine. Like this year I asked one of my favorite coaches, Mingo, I asked him, I was like, hey, we're going to start a tiny prep team and we're going to take them tiny one by the end of the season. And he was like, okay. And then, and then we added on another youth one prep team. Then we added, then it kind of grew. And then he kind of put some other things on his plate as far as schools go. And he literally almost had a breakdown, was, oh my God, I can't do this. And so I had to step back. I had to communicate with those parents then and just say, listen, I know that y'all, our goal was to go tiny one, but they'll be more successful in the prep division. My coaches will be happier. And in turn, they'll get better instruction from our coaches because our coaches were like trying to get them to do these stunts that they weren't ready for. So we it was a learning process for me. And you have to be able to take a step back, even if it's mid-season, and you just have to communicate. I sat down with those parents, and as long as you're genuine in what you're talking about and you explain it why it's going to be best for everybody, not just. It wasn't best for our bottom line. It wasn't best for any of that, but it was the right thing to do. And so we just had to take that step back. and I did too. But then we also have the opposite too. They're afraid to approach him and tell him no because he's the more authoritative one. You know what I mean? But then we get that. It's kind of like the parent and the kids. They'll come to me and say, well, Danny, is making me feel intimidated. And they'll go to him and be like, well, I didn't want to let Rebecca down. So we have that unique role, you know what I mean? Kind of good cop, bad cop. But it's, and sometimes it reverses. Like if I get to that point, everybody knows that I'm, to my own.
Yeah, you don't want
to have all the staff together at once in meetings. That's really hard for us too.
Yeah.
you know what, we've never really done that until this year. And it's made all the difference in the world. And we actually have our employees come down from Austin and they all get together and we work through things and talk through things. Yes, ma'am?
How often do you do that?
Once a week.
Yeah. And it's not always once a week. Like if we, but our goal is to, you know what I mean? Sometimes we have things that are
Definitely right after a competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in competition season right now, and we just started nationals this past weekend. So I wish we would have done it a little bit sooner, but like it's summers when choreography is happening and all that stuff's happening, we're there a lot. So we kind of slide back on those.
And then the last bullet there, and you're going to see this a lot, is ongoing. That culture of conversation, it just has to always be there. It can't be when you're in a good mood or you feel like getting enthusiastic about your business. It just has to be all the time. I come, like in my corporate background, it's coaching all the time. I coach my employees, they coach me, I coach up, we coach sideways. It's just constant coaching. You'll sit down and listen to an interaction between a member and one of my employees in my day job, and the person that's actually on the phone, me and my boss are there listening. And afterwards, everybody's providing coaching to everybody on what they could have done better. It's just part of what you do. You can't take it personal because if you're not providing that means you don't care, right? If you're just going to let them continue to do bad things. All right, so let's move on to parents.
Well, and I'll tell you that is challenging. I don't know how it is here, but getting that level of professionalism with the coaches is a challenge, I think, in the industry overall. And I was talking to Ray about that last night because there's so many, the way the industry started, at least it was kind of backwards. Like they just, they started this thing and they didn't realize how fast it was going to grow. So it's like this now. So now we're trying to add all these rules and, coaches need to be certified and, credentialed and you need to be a professional and all these things. And all these guys that loved cheerleading and then went out and tried to be coaches, but probably, we didn't have the right processes in place for them to learn and be educated. So like when I'll have a meeting, probably every couple months with my all-star director because he's frustrated because we're trying to bring that in, you know what I mean? It has to be there if we want to be here long term. And so, but the mistake is that he calls, his friends from other gyms or is talking to other coaches at competitions, and they've been in it before when it was loose and they could do whatever they wanted, and you know what I mean? And so it's right now that's the challenge, is them trying to understand because the industry wants to go there. All the people who are at the top, they understand where it needs to go, but it's just, those.
And I don't mean to believe me, we'll get back to this, but it has to happen. And it has to happen for their benefit. So the case she's describing.
Right.
And the reason that is because if we do get to that level of professionalism, then we're going to pull in the right kinds of members and the right kinds of athletes to where people can actually make a good living doing this. There's a lot of coaches in the United States that struggle week to week, and it's not like they're doing well for the amount of hours they work, and in my opinion, the workload, because I know what I get paid, right? And so I'm going, okay, that's pretty good, but they could do so much better. So all of this stuff we're trying to do is really for everybody's benefit and theirs as well. And you have to be able to explain that. There's an acronym called WIFM. Do you know what that means? What's in it for me? Right? So what's in it for, you got to explain to them the WIFM. What's in it for them? If we understand and get behind this move to organize and get ourselves to a higher platform, there's a lot in it for everybody, for the athletes, for the parents, and for the coaches. And for the parents, it's critical because Do y'all have parents that move from gym to gym? Okay. Why do you think that happens?
They're not getting what they want.
Exactly. Their experience expectations are not being met. It's not because they're a gym hopper. You do have those, okay? But you have those in every business. You have them. I'm going to go shop here. I'm going to go to this restaurant. I'm going to go to... It happens. But they're not getting the experience that they're really, really looking for. And if we all get to that level, guess what? There's going to be a consistent experience. And to go, hey, maybe the grass wasn't greener over here where I'm going. Over here, it was the same. I didn't realize that. And this one's like 15 minutes closer, or 20 minutes closer, or two hours closer. And our members are gonna be less stressed. Our athletes are gonna be less stressed. They're gonna have more life balance, and those coaches are gonna benefit as well. So I don't mean to get way off topic, but so we're talking about culture, right? So how do we when we look at parents, how do we communicate our culture to our parents? I'm a little crazy, I'll tell you that. I answer probably every phone call that comes into the gym. So if you call my gym, you're not going to get, thank you for calling Stars Vipers, this is Betty Sue, can I help you? You're going to get me, because it's critical to start your culture building at that first experience, in my opinion. Okay. So
and even if you're an owner and you can't do that, it's important that you have somebody in that position that can do that.
No, I'm just letting you know kind of what I do.
He's picky, so he won't let anybody else do it.
But it's the rationale. It's just more of the experience. Whoever does it, they have to be culture driven, because when they come in or they're talking to you on the phone, they have to know what that culture is. In my opinion, if you want to drive a extremely strong culture.
And we'll go through that, I know, in another presentation, but we sometimes lose customers because he tells them our expectations and what our goal of our gym is and what our mission is, and they're like, oh, that's way too intense. But that's okay. We don't, for our gym, we don't want that type of clientele in there. So, and not that we don't want them, but we feel like maybe they need to go somewhere else, start out a little bit slower, and then if they start looking for that later on, we're the gym that they can come to. So,
Outline your contract. Does everybody have a contract?
Yeah.
Okay. So who doesn't go line by line, word by word with every parent in your gym? Everybody does that?
Yeah.
Okay. That is critical.
Yeah. We're learning that that's very, very critical. Yes.
You have to go, like, usually a contract, and this is what it'll normally look like. You have all your, who you are, what's going on, what are your rules, how much you pay, when they don't show up to practice, all that different stuff. And then at the very last, they sign it, right? Okay, so one of the things we've learned along the way and what we do to make sure we're establishing our culture correctly, the way we want it to be, is we'll go over an important element and they initial it right there. So you need to initial right there that you read this part of the contract. We get down here, so probably on each page, they're initialing a very important stop point. And making sure, so then that way when they get amnesia, right, as it happens, right, they get that loss of hey, I didn't know that that's how it worked. Okay, well, here's what it is. And it's not necessarily to say, here, look, you did this. That's not really what the experience we want them to have. We really want to have that conversation first and walk them through that and say, hey, by the way, this is, just to remind you, these are things that we did cover. I want to make sure that as a member of our gym, that we're just not making this, we actually went through this experience together. I know you're busy, I know you have 4 kids, I know all these different things you got going on, but we did cover this. And they're like, I remember now. Yes, ma'am.
Do you do that on a one-by-one basis? Yeah.
No, we do it team by team at the beginning of the year, but it's required for them to be placed. It's required for them to be placed on a team for them to come to a pre-parent meeting. No. Like we have several sessions. So we go through our contract before that because we don't want them trying out if they don't want to agree to our contract. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah. So what we do is we have, before people even come to try out, we have parent informational meetings. Like when we were opening our Austin store or our location, we went up for almost 6 months prior and did town hall meetings so people could get to know us and understand us and ask us the questions on whether they even wanted to try out. So we do that because we have not only our returning parents, but it's more for the new parents that are coming in. And we go through all the culture and what tryouts are going to look like and why we pick teams the way we do and what we do and how we do it, and just kind of go through that. But then after they get placed on a team, for them to be able to go to practice, they have a mandatory practice meeting, and that's when we start going through everything line by line.
Right.
And we normally will even cover our contract even before we have tryouts in those informational meetings as well.
We put our contract out about 3 or 4 months before tryouts, and we want them to go on and read it, and we want the dads to go on and read it. I don't know here, but all the phone calls that he gets mostly from people. My kid's not coming to practice sick. Sorry. He gets that phone call and he's like, well, if we had our parent meeting at the beginning of the year, and we don't threaten, and it's not like he says, well, you said, your wife signed it, you have to have her here. We just kind of walk them through that process. We were like, that's why it was very important for you, one of you to attend that meeting so you understand our philosophy, or my mom has her 100th birthday party, you know what I mean? Like we can't come this, well, okay, well, we went through all of that. So we still have challenges. Don't think that it's perfect and we don't have any of those issues still, but it's just so much easier when you've over communicated all of those things. It's a lot easier.
Exactly.
It makes it,
And you can go to our website, our contracts on the front page, all of our pricing's on our front page of our website. It's all there.
Yeah.
So the more you share that stuff, then the less people feel like you've got something to hide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So frequent parent meetings. This is really important too, and it's not just, it's definitely not when things are going well. Okay, you want to have parent meetings when things are going well, but if you run into an obstacle, whether it's you're hearing some chatter on a certain team, you got to sit them down and have a conversation, because 9 times out of 10, all they want to do is be heard. Extremely. We just had a recent experience. You would think when you open your second location, I touted, we want to do something different. We want to do something different. We want to do something different. Because normally in my experience in the States, it's, okay, we got a location here. We open a separate location, and really it's just another gym. They run completely opposite of each other, or independently, I should say, of each other, but they have the same uniforms and the same name and the same colors. And
usually, at least in the United States, the second location doesn't get the same attention. The teams are not as good, those types of things. So that was our goal for this location, was to have it.
So what we did is we overhired staff in our home location, knowing that we wanted that culture versus hiring a bunch of coaches we don't know, okay? We wanted to be able to take our culture, okay, key word, and just put it into that other gym. And we didn't want to skip a beat. And we wanted to make sure that those teams were as competitive as they possibly could be. So you would think like the best picture in the world would be, okay, we go to a competition, we have a senior 4 team and a senior 4 team, and they place first and second. You would think that's the perfect world, right? It's not. Okay? I see programs first and the other one's 7th, and everything's okay. To me, that's not okay. My thought process is that's not okay. I want all the teams to be competitive. They don't have to win, but they have to be competitive, and they have to know how to compete. They have to look like they love each other out there. So recent experience is we had first and second one weekend, first and second the next weekend, right? Who do you think needed the meetings? The ones that finished second, even though it was to their own gym and their own team. And so we had, actually right before we came here, I think we were leaving the next day. Yeah, it was the day before we left. We knew we needed to get in our car, drive up to Austin, and have a meeting with those parents and listen to them. Okay, so you're never too busy to have that. So frequent parent meetings are critical. You got to have them. They got to know that you care about them. And so that's part of your culture as well. Okay, so your athletes, have a real conversation with them, even the babies.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with our gym and what we do or follow us at all, but we put just as much time into our level 1 team, youth level 1, as probably more time into our youth level 1 than we do our IOC 5. It has to, in our opinion, in our culture, it has to be that way. You know, it has to be about your level 2s, your level 3. Every level, every team you have has to be important, has to be critical. And if you make that part of your culture, it will be. And you got to look at why is it part of our culture? Well, if you look at it from your members' perspective, let's say your parents sitting in the stands, right? And then you have all the coaches out there for your level 5 team going nuts. Come watch this team. And then the level 1's out there, and you got those 2 coaches with that one team, or maybe even that one coach with that one team. And that's what your parents are seeing.
Our same coaches on our World's teams are on our Youth 1 team. We have the same set of coaches.
Yeah, and so these conversations that we talk about with our athletes are our core values. We have 3 basic core values, in our gym with our athletes. Is number 1, you got to be a good kid. Okay, golden rule, pretty simple deal, right? Number 2, they got to compete in the classroom. Okay, they really have to focus and make sure they're travel athletes, so they have to be way ahead. So almost like a college athlete, they have to make sure they're ahead. These are travel athletes. If you do in our culture, they're travel athletes, and so you got to make sure you're way ahead. Okay, and then the third rule is pretty simple. It's find whatever you're passionate about and do it as hard as you possibly can. And in this case, they use All-Star as that piece. And so normally you'll have these conversations with your older kids, but we have them with our little ones throughout the whole process.
Yeah.
Okay? Also, tell them your expectations. It's pretty simple. It really is, guys. They got to know what you expect. They can't come to practice and get away with little kids talking and moving around and it being more of a babysitting class. Okay? Because those parents are paying the same money. When they come here, they got to pay attention. They got to know what they're doing. They got to make sure they're following the rules. It's yes, sir. It's no, sir. It's yes, ma'am. It's no, ma'am. You don't have kids coming in there and saying just their terms that they use. It's not acceptable when they step on your mat. And so if you preach that and you go through that and you tell the parents you're telling them that, you tell the athletes, and you make sure that they're respecting your coaches, then that's part of your culture as well.
Yes. Okay.
How do you make sure that culture, if you've got one kid that's disrespectful, how do you pull them back in and make sure that they're back following that?
Let me give you a story. You want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
We
sure?
pull
Go
the
ahead.
parents in on this, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So, should I share the JoJo story in this situation?
Sure.
Okay. So we have an athlete. Bless you. We have an athlete that has had a tough 2 years when she first came to our gym when she relocated. Right. Kind of a behavioral issue. We kind of got her under the wraps, and got her following down the right process.
With parents help, yes.
Yeah, with parents, having conversations, coaches aware that, hey, we got to make sure, not that we're alienating or highlighting an athlete, but it takes a village to raise kids. You'll hear about why it is what we do, and it has nothing to do with All-Star, okay? And so, this kid was kind of on that borderline, kind of got back. This year, model athlete, comes in the gym, smiling, jump classes, tumbling classes, at stunt, group stunt all the time, motivating, everything under the sun. So what do? You go tell the parents, hey, this is awesome. They've turned the corner. They're doing great. Well, we were at our last competition, and we get a conversation around that. I guess they were telling some jokes that were offensive, right? So how do you handle that, right? So what do you do with that kid? And it was pretty obvious, and it was blatant. And so our culture is to say, okay, we're listening to you parents. We know you're upset. We know some of you are not happy with the situation, and we don't condone it. So what happens? What does this team do? They go out and win grand champs, level 4, get a paid bid to the summit, right? So even during all that fun, okay, great, you got your jackets, you got your medals, let's all sit down and have a conversation. Parents, you're over there, have the conversation. We're all aware that these were the jokes that were told. Okay, athlete, get over here, apologize to your teammates.
And the night before, I communicated with her mom
Yeah.
on what our expectations were the next day. So, and
Yeah.
we were supportive. We knew
So-
it was going to be hard for her. And
Yeah, and then even then, it's like you can't expect your teammates to completely trust you. today, because you've earned everything that you have right now. You're going to be uncomfortable, and that's just part of the process, because everyone in this room has made a mistake. Everybody has put themselves in a situation where you're like embarrassed of your behavior. But if you truly want to be part of a mission or a group, you're going to go through that uncomfortableness, and that trust will build over again. And that's the process she's going through. So when you look at those things, okay, it's a combination depending on the severity, but it's usually a combination. It's us being in tune with what's going on, letting the athlete know that it's not okay, making sure the coaches are aware, and then the parents are aware. So.
And a lot of those conversations that we have, and when we sit down with them, it's when I was a teacher, it was kind of like a parent-teacher conference. You brought them in and you have this conversation with them, and our goal is obviously to raise great kids. You know what I mean? Like, that's ultimately, we want them to walk away knowing that this behavior is not acceptable. It's not going to be acceptable in your workplace. Your boss is not going to tolerate it. Those types of things. We show them that big picture. Then we sit down with the parents, and when you're doing that, they always try to bring in, well, this kid did this or this kid did this. And that's where, Danny and I, just like I was when I was a teacher, I'm not at liberty to talk about other kids. We're here to talk about your kid right now. And because they always try to bring that in. But it is good. I always tell my parents, listen, if there's something going on that you feel like I need to know about, you know what I mean? Like if, and that parent too, in that situation, I'm like, we've never heard, you've said that this was one of the reasons your kid was doing that. But we had never heard up until now. This is the first time that you brought that to our attention. Now that we're aware, we'll look at it a little more closely. And and we have another, again, later we'll talk about the difference between drama and, serious issues, and because that's a huge thing in this industry too. You're working with little girls who love attention, and and guys who are love performing. So it's there, and there's a difference between those two. So okay.
What are we at? 10, is it 10:45?
Is it? Oh my goodness.
No, it's not 10:45. I'm just.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I want to be aware of time. I wasn't on my phone goofing around. I was just looking at time.
Okay.
The time. I can't believe today's Saturday.
Okay.
It's Friday back home.
I know.
Okay, coaches, right? So you got to make sure if they're missing part of your culture, you got to hold them accountable. Okay. It can't be that you feel like, okay, I'm scared of what the outcome's going to be if I approach my coach and hold them accountable. If you have coaches like that and you're scared of that, then there's probably something that's bigger that's wrong. Okay, potentially.
Well, and we don't want to act like, oh, hey, if you don't do this, get rid of that coach. We know it's hard to find good coaches in this industry. We know that, and we know it's hard to find ones that love what they do, that are passionate, that are professional, that that don't go out and party, all of those things in one coach is very, very hard to find. We understand that. So it's so we don't. It's not like we're saying, if you don't do this, it's just like it's been an evolution with our gym, and our coaches, and trying to get them to understand those things that they're doing, can be better in the future. So. And
it's definitely not. If there's coaches in here, it's not poo-poo on the coaches.
Yeah,
time,
no.
Because coaches have the same dilemma. I need to find an owner that's actually going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver all the time. Right? Same thing with athletes. We got to find athletes that are going to deliver. Everybody's in the same situation, right? Everybody. So we put examples on some of the things that are in our gym, right? The culture of sarcasm overall. It's high. I'm not sure what it's like here, but I know in the States it's extremely high. Just some of the things that are said to kids within earshot are acceptable in our culture. It is. And if I just don't know if that's the right thing for us to do all the time. So this is something that we work on in our gym. We're not immune from it. When we first got there, it was really, really bad. It's still not where I want it to be, but these are things that we work on to try and slowly tweak that culture to where we ultimately want it to be, right? That doesn't mean that you can't have fun and be yourself in your own company, but when you're out there in front of kids, you really, really have to be careful, or talking to parents. It's just natural to use a sarcastic tone. It's been my observation. And so that's one of the things that we're working on in our gym,
Right.
is to try and lessen the sarcasm. This is just to kind of give you real life examples of what we do and some of the obstacles that we have. Replacing yelling with listening and passionate instruction. Okay? So sometimes coaches just yell to yell, right? It's okay. Like when I tell, like that first phone call that we talk about, when you pick it up and you start establishing that culture, I tell people, hey, my coaches coach like football coaches. They coach like that crazy, passionate basketball coach on the sideline that everybody cheers for. That's how we coach. It's okay to coach that way when you call it cheerleading, which I don't really call it cheerleading. I don't know if they cheer, but not in our gym. But I want them to understand the difference between being passionate and enthusiasm and all those different things versus just yelling, because maybe you're just yelling.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's constant. We try to say it's constant. They're giving constant feedback to the athletes, constant. And sometimes athletes don't like the feedback they're getting, and there's a difference between that and actually yelling. Yeah. All right, and then submerge. Are we next one? Are we good? Or I don't know. I don't know is a lot of the times our coaches will ask. I think this is how they'll ask the athletes, what happened? And the athletes will be like, I don't know, kind of in that moment where they're scared to tell the coaches, and we can't accept that. We need to figure out. We need to make sure, because if they don't know what happened or they're afraid to tell the coaches what happened, that mistake is going to continue to happen. So we just have to make sure that the coaches take that time to figure it out and let the athletes be comfortable telling them, this is what I feel happened. You know what I mean? So.
And the second bullet is more for if you're growing, right? If you have employees do y'all get resumes sent to y'all and stuff like that? Okay. So is those individuals?
Yeah.
No?
No.
Well, it doesn't mean...
It doesn't happen, it's not overwhelming for us. Yeah.
Believe me, I maybe get like 5 or 6 a year. It's not, I don't give a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But over the years I get less. And I think it's because our culture, people know what our culture is. And so what I meant by the second bullet is that if you have a potential employee coming in, you got to make sure they understand and buy into your culture. Don't be like, oh man, this person's going to make our gym better because of their pedigree or what they've done or what team they were on. If they don't buy into your culture and what you feel is important, which one's more important to you? You have to make that decision, right? And so potential employees, in fairness to them, need to know what your culture is.
Yeah.
And again, I do get less and less because I think people know that we stick to our culture, and sometimes people, they may like it in a vacuum, but once they're in it, they may not really feel as comfortable.
Well,
and
and
want to go through that
with the
process.
way the way that we have it right now, our all-star director kind of is he's the final word, and he's been there since before we were there. So he was in the second year the gym opened, and but he's established all these other relationships with these people. So we could have somebody that's been on, Team USA and has a doctorate from Harvard come in, and exercise physiology and all this stuff come in, and we were like, wow, they would start at the bottom. And so I think the industry, I think probably for the most part, this industry, everybody, you have to start out from the bottom. You know what I mean? We're not just starting these companies where we're like, hey, we need somebody like you to come over here and do this. So
that's you'll find that Rebecca and I are completely opposite, and we'll say different things, which is okay, because you probably have the same dynamic in your gym, with people that you have your leadership group that you have, and y'all may have different opinions and things like that. It's just, in our culture, we don't really feel like there's a bottom. Because our best coaches coach our level 1, they coach our level 3s, they coach our level 5s. So you just got to be willing to do whatever's asked of you in our gym. It's not just, hey, I only work with 4s and 5s. Yeah. Okay. Well, then you probably don't have a role.
And when I said starting at the bottom, they're not going to come in and be our all-star director. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have to get in the, getting dirty, just getting in there, coaching and submerging yourself in that. Yes.
You want to move on to the next
one?
Okay. Any questions that have popped up or anything that you want to comment on, or just any observations? Yes.
I found it a little hard going being a sort of small gym. Finding finding the balance between that and still maintaining paying the bills and
Oh, yeah.
the side of it.
Yeah.
Because, you have to balance those, what you really, really want
Right.
with, that
Right.
need. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, and keeping that, and Danny and I talk about all the time that some of these big, some of these gym owners they're coaching, they're doing their, everything, and we're very fortunate in that, like, I coach cheerleading, but there is absolutely no way I could do what my coaches do. Not, I'll walk out there sometimes and I'll be on the floor. He's on the floor all the time, but I'll walk out there and I'll be like, oh, that looks so good. And my coaches are like tearing it down, like, no, you don't point your toes here, you know what I mean? And so, like, we're fortunate in that, but I mean, I would say as soon as you get to a point where you need to take one role or the other. You know what I mean? Like, either find somebody that can do all of this, but or hire people that can do the coaching job. You know what I mean? And I know that's easier said than done when you have a certain budget and you have all these things that you're trying to pay.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
Well, I choose to not coach every team. I just stick to one that
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with, and I have primary schools as well, so I do that.
Right.
So I choose to employ the coaches, but it just means that I don't
Yeah.
I don't really take. I couldn't support myself on what that is.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a good partner, so that's like
Yeah.
I want to get to a point where it's actually me running it. So I have to just make decisions because I really want that, but I can't
Yeah.
afford to do that. So
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So where like in the conversation of the culture piece did you where is there somewhere where you feel like what we asked or what we're suggesting won't work, or
just in terms of like what
Having 5 coaches?
Yes.
but that's
Yes.
a choice. Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
not a we could talk about that too, but
Yeah.
go ahead, but keep going. No, you're good.
It's a sacrifice.
I absolutely agree with everything you're saying, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But when I've got, I can't afford to do it. We don't have,
Yeah.
the facilities. I don't have the. It's hard work.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to
exactly.
make sure I was hearing you correctly. I didn't know if you were going a different direction. I wanted to make sure I was hearing you correctly. Is really that's why I was asking. Right. And but we'll go. I mean, we go against coaches that have or teams that have one coach and they beat us. So we just do it because it's part of our culture and what we choose to do. It definitely doesn't mean that it's going to be the most effective all the time.
Right.
Like, we have coaches, and a couple of coaches on each team, and sometimes we just work their fees off and they just kind of volunteer their time, so we're not actually financially outlaying anything and paying the assistant coach or
Right.
the junior coach that's coming to help, but we still have the extra body there.
Yeah.
So we do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we even have a slight hybrid of that too. We have a couple of coaches that they'll be in the gym and they're like, hey, well, that team's practicing right now. I'll just go and observe, and they kind of end up helping.
Yeah.
So similar in that situation as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is really important in our gym is that I think it's unique. I mean, I don't know any other gym that we've seen but it's every coach gives input to every team. So it's not like, well, I have a senior 3 and I don't want the junior 3 to be better than my senior 3 because I don't want them beating us for high point or getting that summit bid over us. So they. But Danny and I have facilitated a lot in that. And our all-star director, that is one thing that he would not tolerate. He would not tolerate somebody saying anything bad or negative about one of our other teams. It's like, no, we all, we want every single team to succeed in our gym. So, and everybody has that same philosophy. So it's.
And we face the same challenge, guys. It's not. We faced the same challenges. When we first got to the gym, there was 142 kids in the gym. So we could have said, hey, we can't afford to do that. We can't afford to do that. And I'm not saying go and just spend excessively, right? I'm probably one of the most conservative guys you'll meet. But we had to make a decision. Are we going to grow? Are we going to make those decisions in order to do these things if that's truly what you want? Okay, and the reasons why you want it, are because of what you want, not because the other gym is doing this. If another gym is driving your behaviors and your business plan, then I think you all know the answer that that's probably not a good situation. You have to drive your own plan, and I get it, believe me. I work a regular job too, so I know that that's just because I choose to, and I want to do that, and you know, but it also gives me a sense of comfort as well. So I think we're more similar than you may think in that regard.
Yeah. But you also have to know that that most businesses take between 3 to 5 years to start making a profit, and so there is that sacrifice in there. We have a very modest house. We what I mean, like that's his financial back. We're just very conservative with a lot of the things that we do, and so I think, but that's because we choose. But it's hard. I mean, sometimes when you see that money coming in, you're like, oh, I can afford to do this and this. When you're getting competition fees and you're getting all that stuff to see your bank account, you're like, wow. And then you start writing all those checks out and you're like, oh, no, like this is, it's hard. Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right.
But that also goes back to a later one that we're going to do on it costs what it costs.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good one. Yeah.
Cost money.
Yeah.
The culture side doesn't cost
Yeah.
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 It becomes your normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got your values in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
exactly.
sorry we got off topic and talked about stuff
Yeah.
that's outside of culture. I apologize.
Yeah.
So on the parent slide, I think the second one is the most important to me. Here is not everybody is going to want your culture. Okay.
And don't take it personally.
Don't take it personal, and don't make it personal. Okay.
And that's hard. That's hardest for me because
She wants everybody to like her.
Well, I want everybody to want to be at our gym, and I'm like, don't you want your kid to work hard? Don't they want to be here? So
And that's a challenge. It's never anything personal. Like when you decide to go to a certain steakhouse versus another one, it's not because you don't like the cook over there. I like this one better. It's not like you don't like them personally over there. You decide I want to go to this one over here.
Yeah.
So we're no different. I know that we love our kids and we have that family and that village. It is personal because it is personal to me. But not everybody's going to want to jump into that situation.
Most of the time when we have kids now that exit our families, it's because they're moving on to like school cheer or something, or they exited themselves. You know what I mean? They didn't want to follow our rules. They didn't want to follow those types of things. So it's now we've gotten to that point now where that's kind of the people that leave.
So we talked a little bit about the last bullet, and this is probably one of the most important things. Is what we do really has nothing to do with All-Star in our gym. I know we put teams on the mat. I get it, but it really has nothing to do with All-Star.
And it makes it, like I was saying earlier, like if you can relate anything that they do on the mat, you can relate to a life lesson, anything. So when that parent is not happy and you bring them in and you can like kind of, make sure, have a plan going into that conversation of what you want to tell that parent as far as, future things, would your boss, like, allow that, if you were doing that. And, so it's, those types of things have really helped us, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and the way I articulate it to our parents is that by going through a process of teamwork, of setting a goal, pushing yourself past your limits, and realizing that I can actually, whether it's be in better shape, whether it's create, tumble at a higher level, whether it's build at a higher level, you have to have a plan in place. Okay, you got to figure out what exactly are you going to do in order to be able to achieve those goals. Well, I'm just going to get stronger. Okay, well that doesn't work. We talked a little bit about that earlier. What exactly are you going to do? Well, I'm going to wake up on Monday, 6 o'clock. I'm going to be at the gym, and I'm going to do this. Okay, on Wednesdays, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do this. On Fridays, I'm going to do this. So that way, people who care about you and are going to hold you accountable can say, hey, I didn't see you at the gym on Wednesday. So if you don't achieve your goal, then you didn't execute on your plan. You may have built the plan, but you didn't execute on it. And that's how I explain it to our parents, is really what we're here is when they're going to go to college, they have to have a plan. I got to show up, I got to Every morning I got to wake up at 7.
Right.
And that's why it really doesn't have anything to do with All-Star.
And when we're going through these, at our first parent meeting, we explained to our parents, they not only are they in All-Stars, but that we require they take a jump class now. It's more conditioning / jump. We require they do that. It's $30 a month. If they can't afford it, we tell them, come tell us if you cannot afford that, because we will let you do it for free. And that's how important that part is to us, but that's our expectation. And then a tumbling class, they need to be, we have kids that travel 3 or 4 hours sometimes, so we let them take tumbling somewhere else. We don't care. We just need them to be held accountable for all that. So right now in our score sheets, when we're getting a lot of these things back, we're going back. The parents are like, well, why are we, what can we do to help, to have the kids win? And every single score sheet that we're pulling up right now is individual skills. Is your kid in that jump class? Have they been attending? They're all enrolled, but are they attending? Are they working hard to make that? So it's so much. It helps so much when you go back and you start. If you post, and we share our scores with our parents. We have no problem. So I posted their score sheet. In fact, Boomslang, the one that got the paid bid this past weekend, they had gotten beat the week before, or at a competition, but it was because they fell. They did some other things but when I put that out there, and you remind the parents, these are the things that are gonna that they need to be working on and holding them accountable. It's a lot easier. So,
second bullet. Go ahead.
So how do you change the mentality of our sport sheets, like putting the accountability back on the athletes to be working hard? How do you change that mentality? We find a lot of our parents are like, well, you didn't do enough work to get our kids,
Yeah.
And it's like,
That-
well, your kid is lazy doing jumps.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes back to choosing teams, and I think we do that in another presentation. I think, yeah.
Well, let me answer your question directly. We go through videos with our kids, okay, and we encourage the parents to freeze it when the kid's upside down, freeze it when your kid's coming to the bottom of their jumps, and so the parent, if you're executing on that communication all the time and saying, hey, listen, I wish her feet came together, but they didn't. They're out here. See where they're at? The only way we're going to get to where we're going to get is here. Do you really want to get there? And so it's going to be really uncomfortable when you start doing it. It's going to itch like a itchy sweater. But the more you do it, just like we tell our kids, the more you do it, then the more comfortable, and they're going to expect it. Okay, and that's part of your culture. Yeah. And what's important is when you come up and start talking to them, they're going to be more engaged after you condition them and train them to be the kind of members that you want to have in your gym. I know it sounds weird, but you have to categorize your members. You have A members, you have B members, you have C members, and you have D members. Okay, and sometimes you have to move your D members out of your gym or your practice or whatever it is that you do for a professional living. Okay, because those D members are the ones that you probably spend 80% of your time with. Okay? They're the ones sending you emails all the time, and it's never right. You know what? Maybe it's the wrong culture. Okay? For them. And it's not a bad thing. And it's not like I'm trying to move you out of the gym. We'll talk about that later. We never kick kids off teams. We don't kick people out of the gym. We don't do that. But hopefully that helps a little bit, and we can talk individually if you have questions, and we can just kind of talk through that and kind of role play that a little bit.
And that's why we're not afraid to share score sheets, because we hold up our end. We're like, we have our end, and y'all have your end as parents and athletes. And so, what have you been doing on your end? We've been doing everything on our end that we promised. What have you been doing on your end? So,
a huge one: team first, individuals last. Okay, your personal agenda is at the back of the line as part of our culture. I'm not telling you, hey, this needs to be your culture. I'm just letting you know what's important to us. All right, if you're scared, you're nervous, and you have that issue and you know it, or hey, you want to be last pass and you're not, or you want to be a top girl and you're not, okay, all that stuff. You're at the back of the line. Those are all individual concerns. It's all about your team first. And our parents, over the years, our parents and our athletes now understand that.
Almost every athlete that we've lost is a flyer because they don't fly at our gym, and that's fine. It's about them, and so they've all gone to this one gym, and they're okay with that, and they make them flyers, and they probably maybe shouldn't be, or a couple competitions down the road they're in the back, like squatting, and And it's like, so, you know, their parents' mentality, you're never going to change that. You know what I mean? Like, you're never going to change that. So sometimes it's just like best, like, you know, good luck. You know.
And your parents aren't going to want to hear it, but when you make the right decisions for the athlete, it's actually you showing the most compassion and caring behaviors for those people you possibly can, but they just may not want to hear you. And that goes to, hey, not everybody is going to accept your culture, so don't take it or make it personal. Okay? Let's see. We talked a little bit about this. You're raising the competitive, like our culture in our gym, even if they're 8 or 9, if you choose to be on a summit team or a world level team, you are a travel athlete. And we explain this to our parents. You are a travel athlete. So just like my son who plays college golf, he has to make sure that all of his stuff is in line. Okay, everybody, I don't know, I'm sure it works the same, but we get a syllabus. You know what projects are due. You know when your tests are going to happen. You know it almost a year in advance. You almost get a year advance, is not a semester advance. I'm not sure how it works, like if it's, you know, what the seasons are.
I'm fortunate because I was a teacher, so I can tell the parents, I can, you know, can't, you know, they can't make anything mandatory scholastic after school in Texas. Like, you can't. So they're like, we have a choir concert, it's mandatory for a grade, and it's on a, you know, this important day. We try everything we can to work around it, but we also want them to know that I know the rules too on their end, you know, and what they're trying to.
Or, you know, my kids have it, you know, they can't practice much because they're having trouble in school. Maybe it's the wrong culture.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're doing, your kid maybe shouldn't be in a competitive travel sport if they can't keep up their bargain on their educational piece, which is don't get me wrong, we believe in education, okay, and we believe in it, but you have to be able to manage it if you're going to do this and be accountable to your teammates and your gym, okay.
Or they truly struggle and they, you know, they need to probably focus more.
Because just because
academics.
you say, hey, maybe this is, it doesn't mean you're being mean to them. It means that you're looking out for the kid. You're looking out for them. Okay. Sometimes even more than sometimes their parents are, because their parents are wanting them to do this really, really bad. But you got to be the bigger person in this situation, you know. And I know it's going to impact your bottom line. Believe me, I know it is. But you know, the more you set the expectation, the more they'll get ahead and make sure they're on the ball. Okay. Faith, you know, I put that on there. You know, we have practices every Sunday, and that's probably one of the. We have church. You know, if you want to be in our culture. There's Wednesdays, there's Fridays, there's Saturdays. You'll find a way to make those things work. Okay. We have faith. Believe me, we have a faith-based gym, but we have to figure out how it works for us, especially with what we do and how we do it. You can still have both, but you'll have, you know, you got to make sure you're setting that culture and that expectation up here as well. Personal. This is the one I hear a lot. We missed an event or a birthday party. This is stressful and it's causing my kid to go through adversity. Missing a birthday party is not adversity. Okay, it really, really isn't. You know, I was talking to my parents the other day, and they were like, you know, we had a kid break their nose, and then we had to take a stunt out of the air and put a new pyramid together in a day. Okay.
2 hours.
They're like, hey, we're not going to go to this competition, right? No, we're going. Our coaches are going to make it work. Your kids are going to work hard and make it work, and we're going. You know, all I heard was adversity, adversity, adversity. You know, it's a slight bit of adversity, but it's not adversity. It really, really isn't. You know, I mean, adversity is not being able to feed your family or having a major health issue. But if we teach our kids that this is an adverse situation, then it's going to be adversity for them. And their tolerance for adversity is going to be way, way down here. But if we just say, hey, it's a little uncomfortable, you're gonna test yourself, you know, at the very beginning, and this was at our new gym, where not everybody understands our culture. They haven't been our culture a long time. And so even leading into that, you have parents saying, oh, we shouldn't be here, we're not gonna be competitive, because that's part of their old culture of the gyms where they came from. That was the culture. If they weren't ready or felt ready, they didn't go. You know, we're gonna go, you're gonna be uncomfortable. And so they ended up getting second, almost first. They had like the highest raw score on day 2. And afterwards you can say, okay, well, now you lived it, now you've been through it, now you understand what our culture is and why we do it is what we do. So now they have more experience, and hopefully they're gonna start buying into our culture a little bit more. okay,
yeah.
in that situation.
Yeah, and that was the parent meeting that we had the other
Yeah.
night, and it was, when we sat and actually talked to the parents, it was so good, and it was, if we would have waited, because, we were coming here, leaving the next day, if we would have waited to have that conversation with them, it would have brewed, you know what I mean, and it would have been toxic, so
Yeah.
we made it a
If
point
it
that
had been
night to
just
drive.
her or just me, it wouldn't have worked. We both had to be there.
Yeah.
It really made the difference. We kind of talked about the
Yeah.
culture as far as the actual the
Yeah.
what's and how you do it as far as the training.
Yeah.
We got a few minutes here. Is this the
Yeah.
last slide?
And really, I want to touch on that one again.
Okay.
That was something else in the expectations and our thing is we tell them up front they're going to have to do that jump conditioning class. They're going to have to do all of these things, and we make them come do tumbling run-throughs once they have their routine. They have to. It's hard right now because we are limited space, but they have to come do their routine and their stunt run-throughs. They meet with their stunt group once a week and go through it 15 times. They have to hit it 15 times. So it's like those are those things, and and you'll get parents. Well, I can't make time. Well, that was we went over that at the beginning, so it was.
And we found a gem in that on accident. They have to do all these things, right? But the stunt practices that we did it one year, probably about 3 years ago. We started doing that just by accident because we were focused on the skills. We want them to hit their stunts. I think it was right when we first started working with Action Spirit, and we evolved into more creative and harder stunts. And so we said, you got to be here more. This is what you have to do. But what we found,
and we couldn't get it done in practice time, so we had to make
And so what we found is that it built chemistry, and they were like in a situation where they weren't in practice, but they still were accountable to do something, and they just started trusting each other more. And I think that was even bigger than the actual skill. They actually started caring about each other. We talk about that a lot, as far as when you go to high competitions and all the teams are good, the judges are really going to be able to see who actually cares about each other and communicates better on the floor, and has really had nothing to do with their skills. It's just their culture and their chemistry that they have for each other. There's usually a lot that makes that little bit of a difference in the end.
Okay, last one.
All right.
Everybody's okay.
All right. So athletes. This is another big thing in our gym. Don't be a victim.
Over at 10:30.
Don't be a victim. That coach doesn't like me. They're mean to me. They don't want me to. Is there any coach here that doesn't want their kid to be amazing on the floor?
We have till 10:30.
Huh?
It's 10:30. We have till
It's
10:30. Yes.
Okay, let me just run through these.
Okay.
So social media is a big one nowadays. If I had 50 of my kids in front of me, I would say the best response
And
they would say is no response.
Yeah.
They would finish it. They would
Yeah.
finish that sentence.
Yeah.
Critical. Team first, never put your personal agendas, hashtag together. And then in our gym, tryouts are 365 days a year. Okay? You do not try out and you're not entitled to be on a team. Okay? If you're not trying out for your position every time that you step on the floor, then you're not doing what we need you to do, and you're not doing what you should be doing for yourself. You got to compete on that floor every day. So, you guys all know it. Kids will throw skills at tryouts, and then they tend not to throw them throughout the season. We're not immune from that. We definitely aren't. So that's a big thing. If I ask my kids how long tryouts are, everyone will tell you 365 days a year. I am very, very sorry we ran out of time, but I don't think we're getting kicked out. Did you have a question or any questions?
Oh, it's just a quick one. With that thing, with kids pulling skills at tryouts, you put them in that team, and then they don't reach that ability. Do you guys drop kids' teams?
It depends.
It's a process.
It's a process that we go through, and it's all the coaches, everybody working together, trying to figure out, pulling that parent in, talking to them, hey, your athlete's not, they're not being successful. And sometimes we have those parents that, get upset and, remove their kid, or they'll follow through with our process, and we'll be like, okay, they're going to be more successful on this team. Sometimes we don't have spots for them, so they're an alternate, and it's walking through all of that and putting somebody in that position that can help the team. You know what I mean? We never want an athlete, and I think if you can get the parents to buy into this, they all forget it a little bit, like he said, they'll get amnesia at times, but if you can get them to understand that we want them to help their team. We don't want them to be that level 2 flyer that you want on a level 4 team because you want your daughter in the air. You know what I mean? How are they, sometimes that's the case though, that level 4 team needs that flyer, but and they can execute it, but don't want them on a team they're not gonna contribute to. You know what I mean? So it's
and the main thing is if an athlete's going to go through that process, which is completely healthy. I mean, it really, really is for them to say, okay, I'm not getting something I really, really want because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. That's a lesson. That has nothing to do with All-Star. That's outside of what we do.
Yeah.
But they have to maintain their dignity as they go through that process. You can't break them. Okay, if you break that kid and that was because of your behavior, you own that. You definitely own that. But so that's why it's those conversations and hey, let's meet with your parents, and then you set that actual plan, not just be in the gym more. Okay, that's that vague plan. It's I'm going to be here at this time on this day. I'm going to be here at this time on this day. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lift weights and strengthen my hamstrings or whatever it is they need to do. This is what I'm going to do. Okay, you got 3 weeks, and then let's measure at that point. And if a kid's giving you everything they got, then you're probably going to extend that plan a little bit because that's the kind of culture you're going to want to create. But ultimately, you get paid to make tough decisions. And if the best thing for the team is to move an athlete to a different team and let them know or make them an alternate on that same team, then you have to make the right decision, in our opinion, for your team.
Let's say you have 20 kids, you're gonna make 19 parents happy. You know what I mean? If that, you have to remember that. You can't have that one parent that's always complaining, and you giving in, because they talk a lot and you're afraid. You can't do that because you have 19 other parents are sitting there going, I don't know if I want to be in this, a position like this next year where, we're doing, if the gym owners aren't, making that tough decision to get, to fix it because they're afraid of this one customer. That's fine. They leave and we have 19 other customers who are now talking positive, saying, they'll do everything for that team to make sure they're successful. So that's, okay. All right.
All right, we're over. I'm
I
very,
know,
very
we're sorry.
Thank
I know,
you
y'all
very
go.
much.
Y'all go.
Thank you.